Thank you again. I promise this is the last time that I appear on the stage. By the way, I realized that John Pete will be our sole moderator for 2 days. It must be draining. So let's give him a warm round of applause for that, please. Thank you. Okay. In the World Bank, we do have a couple of studies that we on a regular basis talk to businesses and ask them, what are your problems? So we have something that's called corporate survey, and we have something that is now called Ready for Business. It used to be called Doing Business. In the past, when we would ask entrepreneurs around Europe, what are your problems? They will talk about access to capital. They will talk about regulatory environment that was cumbersome and not facilitating business growth. Increasingly, over the last couple of years, the number one problem that businesses are putting to our attention is inability to recruit skilled people. Okay, so this conference is having a nice sequence of dialogues about skills and digital. So I will be talking about skills as an aspect of innovation and growth. So led by this concern by businesses in Europe about skills and inability to recruit people with adequate set of skills, and at the same time witnessing unprecedented technological advancement, 2 days ago we have published a study called Future of Work in Europe. I will strongly recommend to look for it in the internet. Very happy to share it with the organizers, to share it with the participants. So without having a crystal ball to see the future, we wanted to take a look at some mega trends. So let me try in a couple of minutes to tell you about mega trends and what are the recommendations stemming out of this study. Number one, technology has grown in this decade, over the past 20 years, 100 times. Its impact has been 100 times than it was at the end of last century. Artificial intelligence impacted us 10,000 times more. So technology advancement has two phases. It has one very positive and one challenging. Positive, on a positive side, technology adaptation leads to innovation, economic growth, prosperity, and has a prospect to support sustainable growth. But sustainable growth cannot be sustainable without making sure to benefit the less prosperous segments of the population. We need to make sure that the most vulnerable has the same opportunities. The growth has to be equitable. So has the technological adoption in Europe been equitable is the next question that we asked. First, large firms, not surprisingly, have proven to be more capable of adapting the new technology and adjusting to the new technology, taking advantage of a new technology to increase productivity, spur innovation, etc., etc. SMEs less so. That is a concern. In the past, we would talk about the enterprise sector as small is beautiful, and there are some serious discussions whether that's true, whether the large firms are perhaps better engines of growth. And the truth is somewhere in the middle. I mean, we should be supporting large firms, but we should never neglect SMEs. And what about people? So technological advancement, positive thing, innovation, growth, productivity. What about people? University-educated students are showing, not surprisingly again, more capacity to adopt new technology. They're finding it easier in the labor market, they're finding it easier to find jobs. So young people with university education finding it easier. Many of the companies IT companies that are now operating, and we will hear from Anna soon, who told me that on average age in her company is 35 years. So young companies, and probably relatively small, that are proving to be very dynamic. So university graduates, okay. What about secondary educated and vocational education and training educated? They are lagging behind in terms of technology adoption. So the negative phase or challenging phase of technology adoption is that while it creates positives, it also does not require routine skills that we were needed before. So routine skills that are usually coming from people with, from less educated people. Vocational education and training students in particularly are vulnerable in today's labor market. This system across Europe of vocational education and training is not prone to dynamic change. We looked at a sample of curricula of vocational education and training in different countries across Europe, 20 years ago and now. Some changes, not enough. Not enough. Vocational education and training students are typically coming from disadvantaged position at the start. So they are coming from poorer households, and they come to these schools with vulnerable foundational skills. Literacy, mathematics, basic literacy and numeracy is problematic. And now we are living in the age of technology, and in digital age, we need to recognize one critical thing. We talked about digital in the previous session. Digital in the year 2023 is a foundational skill. It is not an advanced physics any longer. It is a foundational skill. So any education system, including vocational education and training, will benefit from investing early on into foundational skills, including digital. So this investment in VAT is necessary. There are large disparities in Europe among countries in terms of technology adaptation and positive impact of technology. So we have developed a map. So north of Europe, Scandinavian countries, not surprisingly, doing very well. Southern and Eastern Europe lagging behind. So massive effort is required in this part of Europe to catch up with the most advanced economies of Europe. So what can be done in a very, very few words?
Yes.
Vocational education and training needs to be redesigned and constantly redesigned because times are changing. And the system needs to be evolving all the time. It has been not prone to reform so far. It has to, we need to open it up for changes, constant changes. We need to innovate. In Europe, we are not risk takers. We are risk averse. Many governments around Europe do not, Colin was talking this morning about leadership. Leadership is about compromise and risk. No, we do not take much risk. Not nearly enough, and the time requires that we take risks, make mistakes in order to make a change. So rethinking that, particularly focusing on the most vulnerable. Digital as foundational skill. And digital is not only for the private sector to develop. When we launched this study on Monday, among guests was an EU Parliament member, Mia Petra Kumpula-Natri from Finland. So one of the most advanced economies in Europe. And she said, we keep on talking about digital of the private sector, but the public sector is lagging behind in terms of digitalization. Massive need to digitalize public sector, because if you do not have public sector that is offering digital services that are fast, reliable to the private sector will not be able to grow, innovate, etc. Final point is about SMEs. I mentioned that large firms have better capacity, easy to adopt. We should not forget about SMEs, particularly younger and more dynamic SMEs. They need our support in accessing capital, piloting different voucher schemes to obtain adequately skilled labor, support them in terms of regulatory framework, particularly tailored for the needs of a small and dynamic enterprises. And let me end this discussion by quoting one of the most known philosophers of our age, Yuval Noah Harari, who inter alia said, when he talked about skills, we need to reinvent ourselves again, and again. Thank you.
Thank you.